Welcome to the Comedy and Magic Podcast. I'm your host, John Marshall. If you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe, and go ahead and smack that bell to be notified of future upcoming episodes. Before I bring on my special guest, I'd like to share with you a special sneak preview into Luna Shimada's award-winning magic act. Here we go. Please welcome to the Comedy and Magic Podcast, the one and only Luna Shimada. Welcome to the show, Luna. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you said you're not in Las Vegas. You're right on the outskirts. Tell us about that.
So, about almost 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years in March, so we're almost there. I moved about an hour outside of Vegas, to a small town called Pahrump. And the reason I came out here was several reasons. I wanted to get out of the city. The chaos of the city was driving me a little crazy. I lived on a very, very busy street, and when I bought the house 25 years ago, there was almost nobody there. And then in the 25 years that I lived there, um, the street on my corner became a busy street. It used to be a four-way stop sign. Then they put a traffic light there, and then they put a bus stop there, and then they built a school across the street. and, it just became really wild, like it was literally a crossroad, but like a major crossroad. And there were traffic accidents on that intersection, like at least once a month. And yeah, I just started to feel like the energy and the chaos of the city was just like pressure pressing down on me. Um, I just knew it was time to go. I just knew it was time to move. But sometimes when you've been in one place a long time, you know that it's time to move, but at the same time, you're stubborn and you don't want to deal with the changes.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes the universe gives you a little kick in the ass, to tell you, okay, look, it's time. And so that was something that kind of happened. I was, I have this tendency to accumulate a lot of animals. Had a lot of dogs in my house, and more than I guess I was allowed to have within the city limits. So that kind of caught up to me, and that was when I realized, oh, you know what? That was the sign I was waiting for.
I'm out of here.
So I put my house up for sale, and within 6 months, I found this, because I'd had this dream about having a ranch and like, not just a house, but property,
Right.
land, lots of space, for me and my animals, so I could grow my sanctuary. And just I had this vision to grow my my workshop and my sanctuary, both for for people and animals. And so this was just a blessing in disguise. When that happened, I came out. I bought a 1.5, almost it's almost 2 acre property with a beautiful house on it that was fully renovated, and so I was able to get my horses out here, on my property, which was lovely because I had horses in the city that I was boarding in a stable, which was, really expensive. And so, yeah, that's basically, I've been out here for 2 years, just slowly kind of homesteading and building. And it's not quite where I want it yet because homesteading is kind of a process.
Right.
And it's a lot of a lot of land is a lot of maintenance, and it's expensive. So there's always some project going on. Okay, today we're going to tackle this. This
Right.
weekend, it was fortify the goat pen because we just got four new baby goats.
That's cool.
So, yeah, there's never a dull moment around here. There's always something. And then while my handyman was here, I was just like, so I want to enclose this area. I want a koi pond right here. And
Wow.
then we're going to do this on the other side. And, so there's just like, yeah. And the reason for that is because, I hope that I can eventually turn this into like a retreat, a weekend retreat, so that I can host retreats here on the weekend. I can have both magicians and spiritual family folk come out,
Right.
workshop, recreational, just connection, relaxing. I have a big fire pit. um, there's
Yeah.
lots of places to go, horseback riding. We have hot air balloon rides down the
Wow.
street. I mean, there's so much cool stuff to do. But in addition to teaching magic and magicians and mentoring magicians and performance arts, I also do a lot of metaphysical workshops as well.
Man, that is incredible. So, to all my viewers who don't know, Luna Shimada is a award-winning magician, illusionist, if you will. Her father was Shimada, very well recognized in the magic community, award-winning, just phenomenal. Look him up. You won't regret it. So, Luna, at what age did you realize that you wanted to become a professional magician?
Well, that's interesting. Most magicians discover magic when they're really young, usually in their early teens, sometimes younger. And almost everyone I talk to that became a professional magician pretty much has a similar story. Oh, I saw this magician perform a trick, and after that, I was bitten by the magic bug, you know?
Right.
And for many, it just became a hobby, but then there were those that actually made a career out of it. And and that was certainly true for my father. He was an errand boy, and when he was about 13, he went into a department store in Tokyo, and he saw the Tenyo demonstration booth and saw magic for the first time. I think that's what it is that most people are not aware of magic, like as a thing. Like most people, if you think about it, have never even been exposed to magic or magic tricks
Very
until
true.
they see it. And then all of a sudden, there's like, it has this impact on our psyche, right? And for some, it's like, oh, that's cool. Wow. And then for others, it's like, what the fuck? You know
Right,
what I
right,
mean? And
right.
it's something you can't forget about, that feeling that it gave you the first time you saw
That
it.
childlike wonder.
Whatever you want to call that,
Right, right.
it's almost life changing,
It
right?
is.
So definitely my father had that moment, and it was something that he couldn't forget about, and it was, it was definitely his destiny. Now, for me, on the other hand, my introduction to magic was very different because I was born into magic. My father's a magician, my mother was his assistant. They were both stage performers, and, and I'd been on stage since I was in my mother's belly. So
Wow.
being around theater and being around magic and being around performers was all I ever knew. I was literally I literally grew up in it. And it was a wonderful life. I mean, I loved running around backstage and hanging out with all these performers. I especially loved the dancers and the singers. I was more drawn to that than I was to the magic, because the magic was like, well, that's what my dad does.
Right.
That was normal for me. Like, it just didn't really, I didn't really think about it that much because it was just such a normal part of my life. I think that um, I didn't think about learning how to do magic until my dad was asked to do this TV special in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, in the 70s. It was an old show. I don't know if you remember it, but it was called Call It Macaroni, right? And it's basically, it was a show, like a family show, about this camera crew that goes around and they pick a couple of children to go out and meet these interesting people in life to learn some new skill. And in that particular episode, they hired my father to teach these two children that they chose magic. And
Mm.
the whole episode sort of focused around him teaching these kids. It was a boy and a girl, and they were about 10 to 11 years old. And he was teaching them how to do magic. And then by the end of the episode, they did a little show, you know, at the Magic Castle, based on the routine and the magic that he taught them.
Wow.
And I was just kind of like the kid that was sort of like behind the scenes, like watching this. And it never occurred to me that I could learn how to be a magician until I watched my father teaching these children how to do magic. And then something kind of went off in my brain. I'm like, well, hang on a second. Why hasn't he taught me any magic?
Right.
Right? So all of a sudden, like, I didn't even up to that moment even realize that that was an option, you know? Because it's not like he ever really talked to me about it or offered it to me or say, hey, you want to learn some magic? You know what I mean? Like, he had
Right.
no interest in teaching me how to do magic. So I hadn't thought about it until I saw him do that. And after that, I just kept bugging him all the time. I'm like bugging him, like, "Will you teach me magic? Will you teach me magic? Will you
Man.
And he wasn't as patient with me as he was with them, because he's on camera and whatever. But he's like, you're not going to be a magician. You're never going to be as good as me, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like, well, that's not what I expected.
Right.
So he really tried to discourage me. Like, he was teaching them like easy stuff that they could do. But when I wanted to learn magic, he put a billiard ball in my hand and said, okay, just do this for 8 hours a day. And I was just like, what? Why can't I learn the flower thing that you taught that little girl?
Got to learn to crawl before you can get up and fly. That actually has a lot to do with a lot of
So
magic.
I don't know what that was, but that was basically my dad saying, no, I don't want you to do magic. So he tried to discourage me to do it. So then I got kind of pissy and rebellious and said, well, okay, screw that. And and then I just sorry,
That's all right.
uh, gave up on it for a while. And when I was about 12 years old, my mother became pregnant with my brother. So, and by then I was, starting to look like a teenager. So they thought it was a good idea for them to teach me how to be on stage and be his assistant. So I started learning my mother's parts and I started learning how to do the act with him. And so that was kind of like my real introduction on stage. Up to that point, I was just doing a lot of stuff backstage, helping with lighting, helping with tech stuff, presetting, things like that. but I hadn't actually been on the stage until then. So about 12, 13 was when I started working with my father as his full-time assistant. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years until I was about 16. And and then I ran away with a magician when I was 17.
Mm-mm. Naughty,
Yeah.
naughty.
Yeah, that's a story for another time,
Yes, that'd be a whole another
but
episode right there.
I started a new career with my partner then, who I eventually married 5 years later, and we were a very, very successful magic act. We had a phenomenal career together. And it was during that time that I started to really become seriously interested in magic. But again, I was in the same sort of situation I was with my father, where my partner did not want me to perform. He wanted to be the magician, and I had to be strictly the assistant.
In the back, like,
And
yep.
mhm. And no, but I mean, it was the air. I was more than like my mother was such an expert at being the shadow assistant, gliding in and out and just but seen but not seen, right?
Right.
She was great at that. But I had a very different kind of style. Like with my partner, he wanted me to be sort of like upstage center with him, because I was sort of like highlighting him. So I had I had a very dominant presence on stage that contributed to the style and the success of the act. And as I matured, I wanted to expand out of that and do more magic performing. But he was like, nah, that's not going to work for me. I don't want to be a two-person magic act, right?
Mm.
So, that whole thing eventually ran its course, and, the marriage broke up. And by then I was about 27 years old. And I thought, well, shoot, what am I going to do now? Find another magician to go work with? And then I was like, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, wait a minute, 10 years, you know, 10 years with my father, 10 years with this man. I've gotten all my training now. I was ready. So at that moment, I decided to embark on my own career as a career magician. And, um, and I did. I put my first act together in like 3 weeks. And I was on stage doing my first gig. And after that, I never looked back.
And was it true that you actually made your own costumes and your own props?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, I was broke. You know what I mean? But I also came from a tradition of magicians that, we were very creative. My parents' entire act was all handmade. My mother made all the costumes, all the costumes in the show. They made all their own props. What they couldn't make themselves, they dropped out to, people. But those props were made, were custom made to their specs. But they pretty much made everything themselves, everything, all the parasols, everything was just, adapted and created to work in the act. And I learned that from them because I used to help them build and construct those props. I also helped build and construct my ex-husband's props, right? So I had extensive knowledge and experience in prop building and so when it came time for me to build my own act, I was just like, okay, I already know what to get. I got a toolkit and a few trips to the hardware store, a few trips to the hobby shop, a few trips, here and there and just get to work and put that stuff together. And even now, like, 95% of my props are all handmade. Even the
Wow.
table that I use on stage is all handmade. It's all just made from PVC pipes and fabric. You know, Velcro and duct tape is my a gaffer's tape is my best friend.
Mm.
But yeah, it feels good to be able to have that ability to make your own stuff because if I have a vision, I'm like, oh, I want to build a golden arrow that does this specific type of effect, and I can sit there and I'm crafty, I can sit there and I can make it. I want to build an illusion. I want to build a special table that can do this and that and the other. I just sit down and make it.
Well, the other
And
beautiful
everybody
thing
else,
about you is you take simple props and you build these beautiful storylines and frameworks around them. And I know I've came to you for advice before, and I
hmm.
highly recommend her expertise. She's worth it, folks. Look into her. But continue.
Oh yeah, well, I think what really made me come back to the magic, at first it was sort of like a way of, well, I have all this magic knowledge and magic background, so it makes sense for me to do a magic act. But I always loved storytelling. I didn't want to when I had the chance to do my show. Um, I didn't want to do it in the traditional way. I didn't want to do it in the way everybody else was doing it back then. And I
Right.
would say this was like the late 80s, you know. Um, I was raised in sort of like classic magic form. My father's act was very classical. My ex-husband's act was very classical, 1940s. So it was gowns and high heel shoes and rhinestone jewelry. And when I decided to go solo, um, it was the late 80s, and I was always a rock and roll chick. Like that was always my thing. Like just what you see is what you get, right? Like I
Right.
never was a girly girl. I was never a glam girl, but I was forced to play that role on stage because of my partners, and I did it very well. But now that I was, free to create myself, right? um, I decided to go totally like in the opposite direction. So cut off my hair, it was spiky, and leather jacket and rock and roll music, and it was very edgy. And that was what I did. And Magic World wasn't really quite ready for it because they weren't really very female friendly to begin with, right? But, if I'd come on stage in a skimpy outfit or a tight fitting gown and high heel shoes, if I'd fit the stereotype, you know, then they would have been all about that. But I didn't. I came on stage as a gothic, edgy, tough biker chick, you know, and that was like that was already difficult for them to embrace, right?
I loved it.
But
I
that's
thought
who
it
I
was awesome.
Well, yeah, now it is, it is acceptable. But, my mom always said, she says, the problem with you, Luna, is that you're a good 10 or 15 years ahead of your time. Because when I was doing it, nobody else was doing it, and it was taboo, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And then, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years, right? Everybody's like edgy. Like when we hit the 90s, everybody went edgy, including the male magicians, you
Right.
know? And everything shifted, but I was doing it back, in a time in an era when it wasn't that popular, but I was really inspired by these sort of androgynous characters. And Japanese anime always had really strong female characters, and I loved Annie Lennox because of her, because she was so androgynous. I realized that if I was going to enter a male-dominated profession, I had to be strong, you know, and not just more, not just physically, but morally as well.
Thick-skinned,
And
yes.
it was a tough, it was definitely an uphill battle, all the way. Still is in some ways,
Well,
just
I
a little bit different.
congratulate you for getting past that barrier because, man, I love female magicians. Aryan Black. I mean,
Yeah.
surprisingly, there's a lot more than people realize,
Hmm.
female magicians have always been, they've just been very low
We've
key.
always been around. We've just never really gotten a lot of the publicity or um,
It's a shame, too.
historians, I mean, Adelaide Herman and a lot of these, classic historical women in magic, they were packing theaters, packing houses, but you don't see anybody writing about that. Nobody really kept a historical, you know, maybe a few, obviously, because we know about it, but it's not like it was really, like mainstream news, you know? We had to really go dig for it.
Right, right.
It
How do
was
you
pretty
feel about
buried,
Penn and Teller's Foolish? That's a pretty good show that's kind of engaging people in magic nowadays. What do you think about Penn and Teller's approach?
Ooh, that's a loaded question for me.
Well, be
Hmm.
honest.
Well, two things. Um, I think it's good and bad. Um, the good thing about it is, yeah, it does put magic, in the public eye, in the public view, front, front and center. And I do believe that that the show is used to highlight, magic in the best way possible, right?
For sure.
Giving a lot of magicians, a lot of great magicians all over the world, an opportunity to showcase themselves on mainstream television.
Right.
So for that reason, I think it's really good. You know, I think that it's a wonderful platform as long as you understand that that's what it is. It's a platform to showcase yourself. However, if you're going along and complying with the concept of the show, which is, fool us,
Right, right,
right? Which is the part of the show that I don't like, you know, is the context of the show, right? That,
right.
you got these two guys that are like sudden, they're like experts of magic, but like, why just them? I mean, there's a lot of experts in magic, right?
For sure.
But I get it, it's their show. So of course it's about them, they're them being the experts and the critique and the judge and and I think that, there is something a little distasteful to me about this competition format, right? That the magician gets up there and they present this beautiful magic, and then they've got to subjugate themselves to
Pick it
a
apart.
critique,
Yeah.
to the critique of them going, well, you fooled us or you didn't fool us, you know. Unfortunately, we do know how you did that, blah, 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 and it
Right.
just, it takes the edge off that magician, you know? And I think for someone like me, like people have asked me, why haven't you gone on the show? And I'm like, I've been, what am I now? I'm in my 50s now. So that means that I have been in magic and on stage for over 50 years, right? Do I feel like getting on television in front of millions of people and have these two guys pick my show or my performance apart
Right.
and tell me whether or not I fooled them? Because for me personally, I don't feel that that's really what magic is about. I also don't like the fact that the concept of the show teaches lay audience, teaches laymen to be more critical about magic.
Right.
And instead of just enjoying the performance and the artistry for what it is and enjoying the magic for what it is, they're now sitting there going, "Oh, okay, I wonder if these people can fool us. Let's pick it apart. Let's try and figure it out." So it teaches people how to be more critical when they are watching magic,
Right.
right?
Right.
How to pick it apart, how to figure it out. And I've spent my whole career to condition the audience to not experience and watch magic with a critical analytical mind. you know
Right.
I want them to suspend their disbelief and just enjoy the experience. Very much like, you don't walk into a movie theater and watch a film and go, oh man, I don't like the way the director set up that scene, and what's wrong with the lighting over here, and maybe that script could be a little bit better, and
Right. Could have
right.
had a better co-star, I
You're
think.
watching the film and you're enjoying the story. You're engaging with the characters. You're dang it, sorry.
You're supposed to go along with the journey.
Right. But magic unfortunately is one of those things where people want to try and figure it out because it challenges them intellectually. And I don't appreciate Penn and Teller putting a spotlight on that particular, you know, um, trait that people have, right? Like
Totally.
I I think that, but I also understand because somebody had explained to me that the networks, that it's not really Penn and Teller's, decision per se. Maybe it is their idea initially, but I think the networks always want these TV shows to have some kind of gimmick, right?
Right.
Some sort of concept. And when you look at other television shows that are similar, AGT and X Factor, it's all competitive now. It's all like who's the best, blah blah blah.
Right. Right.
And this is, this is how they are conditioning their audiences to enjoy entertainment by being critics. I don't like that.
I
You
agree
know,
with you. I
back
agree
in the
with you.
70s and 80s, we used to watch these wonderful variety shows and we watched Johnny Carson and we didn't question these performers. We
Mm.
didn't go, well, I wonder how they did that, or I wonder, well, that they're good, but they weren't as good as that person we saw last week. You know what I mean? People didn't do that back then. People
No.
just watched it for what it and appreciate it for what it was.
We
You
also didn't
know,
have social media bombarding us with that kind of thing either, and that's one of the
again,
enemies.
I
I
don't
just
feel that social media is the reason why we're critical. I feel like people use social media to train people to act and be a certain way, right?
yeah.
And so it becomes a trend, right? It's just, it takes, it's influence. That's what it is. That's why they call people on social media influencers,
Well, that's a
because you can
dangerous term
influence,
too.
because you can influence your audience to think just like you by the content that you upload.
Right.
And it can be used in a really positive way.
Most certainly.
And there are some great influencers out there that I like. There, I haven't really jumped onto that bandwagon myself. I could have. People think that I'm very affluent in the way that I express myself and my thoughts, and I could certainly do it, but I don't know. It hasn't really, you know, the bug hasn't really bitten me. There was a time when I thought, oh, maybe, but then there's just so much noise out there. And I feel like I don't really want to be part of the cacophony of all that noise that's out there. There's already so much of it.
Yeah.
Um, my gift is working with people one on one, or working with people. I'm a very natural person. I'm a very organic person, right? I prefer organic, or an organic reach. I prefer,
Right.
working with people in person. I have a wonderful studio here that I set up. In fact, I was just working with a student today who's drives out here every week for 90-minute, sessions, and I help different magicians with with various things, whether that is a routine that they are already currently working on that they want improvement on, or if they want to build and structure something from scratch. Um, there's a number of ways that I can help a person advance and grow their art. And so yeah, that's what I enjoy doing. I really like working with people. Eventually, I would like to do more group type classes. That's what I'm gearing up for. But right now I'm working with individuals one on one, and it's something I have been already doing for the past 15 years. You know,
Well,
so
mentoring is very is a positive thing, and it's great that you do that. Honestly, it really is. Just
not sure
the
if people really see the value in mentorship the way they used to. I mean, I had mentors, and so I feel that so much of what I've learned has been passed on to me, and I had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants, so I was
That's
lucky.
true.
And I have this wealth of knowledge and experience, a lifetime's worth. So there's a lot that I can You know, there's a lot that I can teach and pass on, but you know, unfortunately, a lot of magicians are learning magic from the internet. They're learning from other magicians that are learning magic from the internet. They're also
Yeah.
buying a lot of stuff because there's an enormous amount of magic material available out there now. None of that was, you know, was true when I was, you know, getting into magic.
Nope.
You know, we had to make our own props because there was literally nothing on the market, you know, that would serve our purpose, right? Unless we wanted to be
True.
like a children's magician and just buy, you know, hippity hop rabbits and, you know, a sawing and
Square
a
circle.
zigzag. Right. But if we wanted to be creative and unique, you know, we had to build our own stuff,
Yeah,
you know. There
you
was
are right.
there was no way, there was no other choice. But now, you know, there's just so much stuff out there and so much magic available that you know, you can literally buy a floating table. You can buy, you know, you could buy anything and just put it right on stage and perform it, you know. And but I still make my own props. When I think about creating new magic, you know, my mind doesn't even go to the magic store. Oh, what kind of effect can I buy? You know, it just doesn't even occur to me. And
Right.
then I go to these magic conventions and I walk through the dealer's room and I'm like, wow, that's there's a lot of stuff. You know, there's a lot of stuff out here. And I know, and I see these guys stuffing their bags, buying all these tricks, you know. I went through a period where I did buy a couple of effects. And you know what happened? I played with it for like a week or two and then stuffed it in a drawer. I have a bunch of magic in drawers
Oh,
that
I'm guilty. I've
I
got
don't
crates
even
of it.
use or play with anymore. I was just kind of
Yep.
like, well, that was, you know, and I bought it at the time because I thought it was cool. I thought, well, maybe I'll use this. But no, I've never really, you know what I use it for? Every now and then I'll have a student come through that'll be like, oh, I'm working on
Oh,
something. And I'll be like, you know what? Hang on a second. I'll go into my drawer. I'll pull something out and I'll be like, I got something for you, you
a
know?
little gift from me to you. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, or we'll take something that's already existing and adapt it and make
Yeah,
something else out of it. That's another thing I love to do is I like to take magic tricks that are useless to me and repurpose them.
for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
So,
How do you feel about the exposures in magic right now? And we were talking about influencers, and we're just damaging
well,
the art.
so I'm old school, obviously. So, of course, it bothers me when there are magicians out there or just people in general exposing magic. Um, Not because they're exposing the trick, mind you, because there's a lot of tricks, you know, out there, and magic has, in some form or another, always been exposed, and then people eventually forget about it. They forget about it quicker than you realize, you know, and it doesn't really stay on people's minds very long. So that part of it, honestly, is kind of a fleeting thing, like everything, you know, on the internet. It's like, oh, you know, everyone talks about it for you know, for a week or so, and then it vanishes, never to
Yeah.
be thought of again. But you know, what bothers me about the exposure in magic is the principle of it. I'm big on principles and traditions, right?
Yes.
And what bothers me is the fact that they're breaking the magic code. That bugs me because I feel like when you become a magician, it's like joining a secret society. It's like becoming part of a secret club,
You take a
right?
secret oath.
And and you take a secret oath,
Yeah.
and you know, and your oath and your oath, your word,
Word.
okay, which your word, which I believe is, you know, it might not mean anything today anymore, but back in my day, and
It
you
was
know, and I
everything.
still hold true to it, your word is supposed to be your bond, right? You know, if you can't be impeccable with your word, you're supposed to take a secret oath. I don't know if anyone actually ever has.
I did.
We talk about it, but you know, I mean, but we're supposed to, it's just kind of a known thing, It's like the in show business when we say the show must go on. Nobody knows why the show must go on. We just know that it has to go on, right? Like
It must.
it's tradition. It's tradition. And so I think that there's this it speaks a lot to the way, to our environment and to our culture now, right? This sort of lack of respect for our art form, this lack of respect for, the secret code, right? Because when you become a magician, it's like you've joined this secret society, you've joined this secret club, right? And there are rules that you have to follow, and the rules are there to protect the secrets, to protect the art form, and and that has a long, long tradition and a long history. So being a traditionalist, I think that's what bothers me the most about it, is that every time somebody exposes magic tricks, the public, they're not just disrespecting other magicians, but they're also revealing who they are.
Good point.
That they are a person who lacks principles and ethics. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah. So
So
very
that's what
true.
I got. That's what I got. That's my thoughts on that.
So my follow-up question is, uh,
Mm.
you know, how was it returning to the Magic Castle after all these years? I see you were just performing there not too long ago, and that had to be great.
I took a couple years off from performing when I moved out here. Um, there, every now and then, being that I've been in magic as long as I have, and just some of the challenges that I have faced throughout my life and my career. Every now and then I'll hit a glass ceiling or I'll hit burnout, and I have to take a break. I have to step away from it. I have many, many other interests in my life besides magic. And so sometimes I have to, put a break on that and focus on other things. Um, so when I moved out here, the move was just incredibly difficult. It's really, really hard to pack up 20 years of your life into boxes, and
Yeah.
three kids, two kids actually, because my eldest moved out already. But yeah, and all these animals and just the history. I mean, it's not just physically taxing, but it was also emotionally taxing as well. And I felt like I was moving two houses, because I wasn't just moving my own stuff, I was also moving all my mother's stuff, because I had liquidated her estate a few years before that because she died.
Oh,
And so, I had her entire library, and it was just a lot. By the time I got here, I was just like, okay. I was also dealing with some health problems, some health challenges. And that was something that I was just putting on the back burner and ignoring for a long time. And it got to a point where I couldn't ignore that anymore.
yeah,
So um, I had to, I had to stop. It was hard because I had a residency in Vegas. I was working, 3 nights a week at a venue in Vegas, doing my full evening show. And I had to pretty much stop that because I couldn't even stand up on my legs by the end of the night. It was that bad. And so yeah, it was a really long. It was longer than I expected. It was about 2 years, but I did deal with my health problems, and I did get back on a health, on a journey to health. Lost about 75 pounds. Completely changed the way that I eat and live, and I just felt ready this year to, well, last year, to hit the stage again, and did a lot of personal work as well. Really coming to terms with who I am now at this stage in my life, right?
right,
Because for some people, performing magic might just be a performance, but for me, it's a way of life.
right.
And And so as I grow and evolve and change, my show has to as well because it's a reflection of me.
I like that.
So the show that I was doing before, and I was getting bored with it, I was getting frustrated. It wasn't really allowing me to really embrace myself as a norm. So I had to also take that time off to go through a process of reinvention. Yeah. Going back to the castles was great, especially after being gone for so many years. I was welcomed home with open arms, and it was wonderful. And I always look forward to going back there. You know, that was it's my home. I grew up there. My parents brought me there in 1972 when I was just a little kid. And, you know, I ran around all over that place my whole
Yeah.
life. I did my very first show there. A lot of history there
Wow.
for me. A lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be very different nowadays now that Milt's gone. I mean, Irene's gone. I mean, Max
Everything's
Maven's
different.
gone.
The whole magic world is different. You know, we've got new marshals and new, you know, there's been a major changing of the guard and different people and different organizations running everything. There's still a few of the old guards left,
Yeah.
and you know, thank God for that. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't even know who I am anymore. You know.
Luna, tell us where we can get a hold of you, or where we can look you up and connect with you
So
on the social media.
yeah, so Luna Shimada on Facebook. It's uh, you know, my professional pages are supposed to be professional pages, but they're really just my pages that just sort of reflect my day-to-day life. So
Mine too.
that you know, sometimes I'll post things about my career, post things about workshops, but most of the time it's just me going, "Hey, this is my goat." You
I
know?
saw that today, made me laugh. Brings a smile to my face every time.
Because I guess at the end of the day, I realized that, you know, I do have a professional page. I don't moderate it very well. I should probably hire somebody to do that because I don't enjoy that, honestly. The
Right.
self-promoting stuff. It just, you know, it kind of goes contrary to my personality.
Right, right,
You know, I'd much rather show you my snake, you know, than talk about like upcoming gigs and things, you know, which is
right.
just so boring to me. You know, it's like, yeah, so I'm going to give you all my dates and show you my tour, but you know, like, none of you are going to come anyway. So what am I doing by announcing this stuff, right?
Oh, shame on you.
No, but seriously, you know, I will do one little tiny plug.
Okay.
If this airs before in time, I am going to be presenting a talk at the Mystify Magic Festival, which is coming up in March. March 10th, 11th, 12th, no, 10, 11, 12, no, 11, 12, 13. There it is. It's the second week of March. And it's here in Las Vegas at the Santa Fe station. But so if anybody is planning to go to that or has signed up for that, it's the first all female magic convention. So this is
Nice.
exciting. This is exciting. Yeah. And I will be presenting a talk there, a very kind of non conventional talk. It's exploring the divine feminine. So that's going to be happening. I will also have a dealer's table because I will be selling my jewelry. That is something else that I've been doing lately. That's part of my creative work is see, this is because of the blurry background. I make crystal jewelry
Mm.
and we're not going to get into that, but you know, but that's another kind of facet of my magical work. I've been working with stones and crystals my whole life, and so I've decided to start making magical talismans, you know, as
Why not? Why
part of my
not?
work. And yeah, and I've made quite a few in the last 6 months, and you know, it's been helping a lot of people, and I like that. Besides being really pretty and nice to wear, it actually has some benefits.
And it makes you feel good for crafting something that beautiful. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
for sure.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
So
go.
yeah, lunashimada at me.com is very easy to remember. Luna Shimada at me. gmail.com is my email address. You can find me on Instagram under Luna Shimada 66 and Luna Shimada on Facebook.
66, is that the year you were born? That's a good year.
The year of the fire horse.
It's a good year. I was born that year too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I knew there was something in the Luniverse there drawing me to
Yeah.
you. Luna, I appreciate
That's
you sharing your stories and your personality with us. You are a beautiful, beautiful person. I love our conversation today, and I thank you so very much for being here. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for having me. All
My
right.
pleasure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have left on today's show. I'd like to thank my special guest, Luna Shimada, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. Till the next time that we meet, God bless you.